Hello! In this era of globalization, it is a reality that languages are in contact for cultural, political, or economic reasons. But how is name a person who talk two languages or even more? How are they described? To have a scope of this topic, let's see two of the main terms.
Hello all, this is Juanita Brown, and I'm going to talk about bilingualism. When we talk about the person who talks two languages, we say this person is bilingual. That means uses two languages interchangeably in any communicative situation and with the same efficiency. People may become bilingual either by acquiring two languages at the same time in childhood or by learning a second language sometime after acquiring their first language. Often is what occurs with children of immigrants. These children grow up speaking their parents' native language in their childhood home, while speaking English at school. Children can also bilingual if their parents speak more than one language to them, or if some other significant person in their life speaks to them consistently in another language.
You really speak Italian?
See, my grandmother, Nana Sophie, lives in Tuscany. Since I was a baby, I've spent 2 weeks there every summer.
Questi, il mio cherubino, sono delle oliva.
I love you, Nana.
Oh!
Idiota!
Every time I spoke English, she hit me.
Also, a study about us exchange students have shown the improvement of language proficiency through the interaction with local people. So, in this way, students construct their second language identity. This means how they understand his or her relationship to the world and how he or she understands possibilities for the future.
Come on, mister. Can you help me?
Je suis désolé. J'aimerais vraiment pouvoir vous aider.
Oh, forget it. I am so stupid. Anybody could have learned this dumb language by now. Here I've listened to nothing but French for the past 2 mois. Et je ne sais pas un mot. Hé! Mais je parle français maintenant. Incroyable! Et monsieur, aidez-moi. Ces deux types nous font travailler jour et nuit. Ils ne me donnent pas à manger. Ils nous font dormir par terre. Ils mettent antifreeze dans le vin. Et ils ont donné mon chapeau rouge à l'un.
De l'antifreeze dans le vin? Oh, mais c'est sérieux ça! Viens avec moi, fiston. Tu n'as plus rien à craindre.
Mon sortez. Vous aurez toujours une place dans mon cœur.
As it is well known, children can absorb foreign languages so quickly, and for an adult sounds very challenging. But beyond the obvious differences, adults are more willing and able to learn in a formal learning environment. There are some children learn new things about language. They use the same part of the brain that they use for motor control. Adults, on the other hand, make use of the part of their brain in charge of higher cognitive functions, the part of the brain that develops.
You'll come again. Who's next? Oh, hello.
Yo no creí en fortunas, pero entonces me salió una galleta
Sí, sí.
que decía que hoy era mi día dichoso. Primero no lo creí, pero entonces me caí contra la máquina de dulces. ¡Ay, ay, ay!
Coordinate bilingual are those people who have learned both languages in different environments. The language will probably be used for different functions. Compound bilingual are those people who have learned both languages from the same environment. The language will not have separate system in the mind, but they will have one system. The concepts will be kept in one box in their minds, while the words will be different for both languages. Subordinate bilinguals are those people who have learned a second language and cannot understand it without the help of their first language. Such people will translate their words of second language in their mother tongue. Then they will be able to understand them. There are still several other classifications of bilinguals, which are dependent on variables such as cultural identity and language usage. Besides these type of individual variables, bilinguals can be classified classified depending on various social variables. Fishman states that depending on the social status of language, bilinguals can be classified into folk and elite bilingual, where folk bilingual are often language minority community whose own language does not have a high status in the predominant language society in which they dwell. In contrast, elite bilingual are those who speak a dominant language in a given society and also can speak another language which provides them additional value and benefit within the society. Individual bilingualism refers to the ability of an individual person to use two languages. When two languages are spoken by most members of a speech community, typically by all or almost all of the adults in that community, then the community as a whole can be described as bilingual. This is known as societal bilingualism. However, societal bilingualism can also occur in situations where a society consists of two distinct groups, two speech communities, each with their own speech variety, where few individuals are bilingual in both varieties. Simultaneous bilingualism, learning two languages as first languages. Infants who are exposed to two languages from birth will become simultaneous bilinguals. Receptive bilingualism, being able to understand two languages but express oneself in only one. Children who have high exposure to a second language throughout their lives but have had little opportunity to use a language will fall in this category. Sequential bilingualism, learning one language after already established a first language. This is the situation for all those who become bilingual as adults, as well as for any who became bilingual earlier in life. Interference. This occurs in a case where a speaker consciously or inadvertently brings in pronunciation, sentence formation, and vocabulary of the source language while using a target language. Ruth-Rabina has argued that interference is always present in bilingualism, especially when the two languages are closer in their phonological, syntactic, and morphological features. Code switching. Code switching occurs mostly in bilingual communities. Speakers of more than one language are known for their ability to code switch or mix their language during their communication. As Miller indicates, many linguists have stressed the point that switching between languages is a communicative option available to a bilingual member of a speech community. This will put those who are not bilingual at a disadvantage because they will not be able to communicate effectively. Translation. Since a bilingual person masters two mutually incomprehensible languages, he becomes a translator. The problem with translation is that any translated version must lose something of the author's original intent, especially poetry. The translation is sometimes said to be a better word than the original, and in such cases, one is actually dealing with the new, thought-derived work and not just a translation. Now, I introduce my friend Nacho Perkins. Hello, Nacho. You look incredible.
Thanks, Juanita. You look great too. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about multilingualism. Multilingualism is the ability of an individual speaker or a community of speakers to communicate effectively in 3 or more languages.
Atención, número Simpson tiene 10 segundos para explicarse antes de que abramos fuego.
Es que es mi primer día. It's my first day.
or passive, and productive or active skills. The difference being between understanding a language, spoken or written, and being able to produce it, writing or speaking. Another aspect that it must be considered with is additive or subtractive tendencies. Additive bilingualism usually occurs when both languages continue to be useful and valued. The subtractive variety typically reflects a setting in which one language is more dominant and the other less used. Immigrants bring languages into contact and sometimes, as with imperialist and colonial expansion, their language makes its presence felt through military, religious, or economic force. Some cultures have had more explicit policies here than have others, but all imperial powers have, directly or indirectly, made their languages attractive and sometimes necessary to conquer or colonize groups. Multilingualism can also occur as a result of a political union among different groups. Switzerland, for example, incorporates German, Italian, Romansh, and French. Canada has English and French. Multilingualism is also commonly observed in border areas, for example, in the Mexican-American border in the south and New England and Quebec in the north. Now, we will describe a framework of language context settings constructed by John Edwards and used by many scholars. It has a particular reference to minority linguistic groups. The framework can be used to describe a great many of minority languages. To provide geographical context to this framework, there are three basic distinctions. Unique. This type of minority language only exists in one state. Non-unique. This type of minority language exists in two or more states, but in a subordinate position. Local only. This type of minority language is a minority in one setting, but a majority in another. Vivian Cook has argued that most multilingual speakers fall somewhere between minimal and maximal definitions. Cook calls these people multi-competent. Widespread multilingualism is one form of language contact. Multilingualism was more common in the past than is usually supposed. In early times, when most people were members of small language communities, it was necessary to know two or more languages for trade or any other dealing outside one's own town or village. For example, the Sub-Saharan Africa and Indian. The linguist Wolf estimates that 50% of the population of Africa is multilingual. Sometimes bilingualism is contrasted with multilingualism. The former one is used to refer to two languages as bi, means two, while the latter is used to refer to more than two languages. Another distinction is that bilingualism refers to individual phenomenon of speaking more than one language, while multilingualism is used for societal bilingualism, the situation in which whole societies are bilingual. Examples are Pakistan, India, and Canada. More recently, however, the term multilingualism is being used less frequently as compared to bilingualism, which is now used to cover all situations in which more than one languages are being spoken, whether that situation is at individual level or at society level. Thank you.
Arigato.
Merci.
Xie xie.